So then the last kind of question I was asked is, well, what's the story? Why did we make this change? Why did we move forward in this way? I'm going to talk about this, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about the kind of more personal piece. So this slide is one of our favorite slides to kind of show, because on the left, you see two different versions of how you acquire music, or how we used to acquire music and how students do it now. So when I was in college, this is how you went and got books. Excuse me, not books. When we got music, you walked into a record store and you wandered through these aisles and you bought your record. Even if you only liked the one song on the album, you bought the whole album, and that's what it was. That's how we acquired content. That's how we used intellectual property, right? Now we've moved over to this kind of Spotify streaming method, where you pay one flat rate, similar to the Equitable Access piece, and you have the content that you want, whatever it may be, but you don't own it. It's not yours. You don't have this physical thing in your hand that is yours. You can just use whatever you need whenever you need it, or whenever you want it in that case. Then we kind of move over and we look at, okay, well, what are the types of intellectual property vendors that stayed within the old model? And that's kind of the higher end, the upper little part here, the Tower Records, the Blockbuster, and the Borders. Those companies continue to sell individual units or rent individual units or whatever it may be, and they're no longer with us. Now, instead, we have Spotify, Netflix, Hulu, Apple Music. This is how we consume this content. This is how, and I say we as in everyone, not just students, but this is how people consume content now. And so even though you can still buy a DVD, I would ask most of you, when's the last time that maybe you did buy a DVD instead of just using Netflix? Chances are it's, very few you have recently. So that's kind of, what we were looking at was like, okay, where is the world going and how are people consuming this content nowadays? And looking at this is what kind of drove us to this kind of flat rate streaming type model, where you have what you want with a one price and you don't have to worry about anything else beyond that. So then moving on to kind of a more personal note, or, personal is probably the best piece. When we were developing this program, we asked one of our employees to present, his story. And many of you may have already heard this story, and it's called the Carlo story. So when we went to present our program to our chancellor's leadership team, we had Carlo present this story that was his. He is everything that we would look at in the students that we're trying to make sure that we're servicing. He came from a low-income family, came from a single-parent home. He participated in STEP. He he's Hispanic, so he came from a marginalized group. And so all those things that we're looking at and trying to make sure that we're trying to serve. So he got into UC Davis, and he came during move-in week, and his mom was so extremely proud that he got in. He was a first generation, and ultimately, after they had moved him into his dorms, she was getting ready to go, and she gave him a huge hug and said, I know textbooks are expensive, but I've been saving up for you everything I can. Here's some money for you to go buy your books. And she gave him a sealed envelope. So again, they said their goodbyes. She went off and he came over to the bookstore. So he came into the bookstore, went downstairs to the area where our course materials were. And Carlo wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. And so he went over to the engineering department and started looking at different books. And he found his first book, and it was $230. So he opens up his envelope and he looks inside, and there's $100 in there. Everything that his mom saved couldn't buy him one book. He didn't know what to do. So again, first generation has no idea what options he has. So he starts walking around the bookstore looking at different books, trying to figure out what can he afford. And he comes across political science, has no idea what it is, but realizes he can afford those books. So Carlo changes classes, Carlo changes major. Carlo now has a degree from UC Davis in political science, not aeronautical engineering. Nobody should have to do that. No student should have to give up a dream because they can't afford their course materials. So we knew we had to change something. And this is what we've done.